That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and we have a couple of people joining us today. We've got Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. It's been a great week for City. We've also got Logan with us. How are you, Logan?
Alex, Dan, good to see you, boys. Good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were sort of talking last week, Logan, about sort of the big couple of fixtures we had coming up against both Leeds and Stoke. We'll talk the Leeds game first, and I guess I will start with you. Sold out MKM Stadium, 0-0 draw, and arguably a draw that, we were pretty unlucky not to come away with the 3 points.
Absolutely. I think when you started, or when we finished the episode last week, rather, you said that you'd be pretty happy with 4 points. That was kind of the goal. And, I guess when you reflect on the game, particularly the Leeds game, it should have almost definitely been 6. And I think that the fact that that's even, what we're talking about, probably talks about the leaps and bounds of the way that City have come on in the previous few weeks, and just the way that we're playing football. But look, the Leeds game was a really interesting one for mine. I thought, particularly that first half, but absolutely the first half an hour, I thought we looked out of our depth, and not incredibly out of our depth, but I think it was just kind of, paid tribute to Leeds being a Premier League team that had been relegated, and they've still got a lot of star power on the pitch, and they looked really up for the challenge. And a lot of our speculation was how we would handle the occasion. And, half an hour into the game, the answer was not well. But as the game grew on, and as the kind of, a foothold got put in the game by City, and then the red card obviously made a huge difference. They really didn't look like scoring in the second half. And, I know that we'll talk in length about it, I'm sure, but the Traore miss is obviously the focal point. That it's just one of those things that happens in football. And it doesn't matter how many times you watch the replay, you just cannot believe that he missed, that goal from that position. And I can only imagine what was going through Connolly's head when he delivered the pass. It was like he must have peeled off and started celebrating early. It was such a gimmick. But that's obviously the critical moment in the 88th minute, I believe. Apart from that, it was a really solid 65 minutes by City, and one that gives us a lot of optimism for moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is I'm so happy that Adama scored against Stoke, because I'm sure that moment was, he'd not have been able to sleep after that Leeds game with that miss. That, as a player, you'd just be absolutely kicking yourself when you've basically cost your team 3 points in that sense. Dan, yeah, thoughts on that overall performance against Leeds? Because, I mean, look, I think Logan's spot on. I think first half we really kind of weathered the storm from Leeds' pressure, and it was only really that second half we could kind of grow into the game and show what we could offer.
Yeah, given the context of when Traore's miss was, I can understand why you consider it sort of, the extra points dropped. But I think overall the 0-0 was a fair result, because they had some really big chances early on. They were only a sensational all-stop save at the near post. I think with his feet, which stopped them going 1-0 quite early in the game after about 15 or something minutes. So I think Logan did mention Leeds were quite dominant. I think they pressed us well in the right areas to regain possession quite quickly, which we adapted at half time, and then obviously were certainly dominant in the second period, even before the red card. But I just think it was almost a game of two halves, and due to that, I kind of think a 0-0 was pretty fair. I think we've been harsh on either team to have lost that game. But just in a general sense, I thought it was a really good game of football, which is nice. It's nice to actually just, we're pretty much watching City every week and going, this is actually just enjoyable to watch for once, which is not always the case when you watch football or follow City. So, that's just, I guess, again, echoing, Logan's sentiment, that just how far we have come since even the end of last season and this season, where I think it's that we talked a lot at length last year about turning losses into draws, and now this year focusing on turning draws into wins. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. This is a game that last year we probably would have conceded those early goals to Leeds and we would have lost it. But we've, found a way to stay in the game. Had our opportunities to win it, but didn't. But we didn't lose it. So they're valuable points earned against tough opposition.
Is there any criticism or frustration with the fact that we didn't have any shots on target despite Leeds going down to 10 men? I mean, I've seen sort of the argument made that, it's a sold out MKM, it's a derby game. They've gone down to 10 men and we've still not managed a shot on target. I mean, I sort of see it similar with the Leicester game where we're approaching these games very much as a don't lose first of all. And then if you can snatch a goal, sort of take that as a bonus. And I don't hate that as an approach, but do you sort of see any sort of fairness in that criticism of not having had that shot on target, Dan?
Not really, because I think it's one of those things where we are still a work in progress. And I think, we had lots of attacking intent in the second half. So it's not like we were parking the bus playing for a nil all. We were going for it, and we were exposing them. We were trying to make it work, but it was just in that final third, the decision making or finishing, as it were. I know Philigine's been working real hard, but sort of seems to be at times slowing the play up way too much. When he gets on the edge of the box, he's not sure which option he should take. He sort of stands there and then tries to fake out his defender and do something. And I think, we saw, in the Stoke game when he actually just went, I'm going for it, and I made my decision early and I'm driving, then, he was able to make something happen, setting up Connolly. So I think that's sort of, one aspect of it where we get into that final third, we're a bit slow, not really that willing to really take on those wide defenders and get in behind, which, I think Vinagre does really well. But yeah, I think that was sort of it. It wasn't through a lack of effort. And obviously, to fill the MKM, it would have been great to have come away with a win, especially against Leeds. But I think the fact that we filled the MKM is reason to celebrate enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, that point of Philogene, I think was almost emphasised by when L'Aquilo came on the field late and was driving at goals so effectively that sort of highlighted what a bit of directness can do to our game. Logan, what did you make of it in terms of, I suppose, almost going for going for the draw first is it's not that we were parking the bus, like Dan said. I don't think we were parking the bus, but we were certainly going out there not to lose, I felt.
In the beginning stages, for sure. But I do think that it's kind of a trend that we've seen in the last, not just isolating the Leeds game, but we are coming home with a wet sail. And I do think that is a large testament to how much we are moving the ball around. I think the fact that we are playing a possession-heavy game and really forcing teams to work to get back in shape, it's allowing us to play the way that we've been playing in the last 15, 20 minutes in particular. I mean, outside of the Norwich game, which they certainly were the team that you would say were the aggressors that came home, despite us scoring against the run of play early. It has been all City, and I think that there's a stat to back that up with how prolific we've been in the dying moments of games in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes. And to me, that's no surprise. I mean, look, I agree with what Dan's saying in the sense that Leeds, on the balance of play, would have found themselves or felt rather, robbed to not have taken away a point. But like when we talk about that Traore miss, that wasn't just like, some long range speculation goal attempt. It was through an incredible patch of dominance, of moving the ball around, passing into that place where he finally, broke their defense, unlocked them so much so that it was a tap in, and the tap in was missed. And I think that's really speaks, true to Rossini's philosophy. It doesn't always mean that we're going to have shots on target, but I mean, Dan hit the nail on the head when he said it wasn't like there was an attacking play. It was all City. And you got to remember that when Leeds did go down to 10 men, they did have a tendency to, like anyone, to sit behind the ball and to really try and, shut up shop. And I think they did a fairly good job of it because we didn't score. But with that being said, it wasn't like we were sitting there going, oh, this game's just going to peter out. We're not going to get a goal. Right up until dying moments. There was every chance that we were going to finally get that breakthrough. And I think that that's probably more important. The fact that we can sit there and say, we really threw the kitchen sink at them and it should have scored, as opposed to going, oh, we just didn't have any answers. Once they sat down, we kind of ran out of ideas and the game fizzled out. So I kind of look at it as a real positive to walk away with that feeling. If there is any silver lining, I'm sure Traore would like hearing that viewpoint, given he was the one responsible.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, look, I might start with you then for your MVP votes for the match, I suppose, Logan.
Yeah, look, I tossed and toiled with this one. I want to give it to Connolly, but I'm going to give him 2 points. I thought what's his name? Keeper, also. Also, is 3 for me. I think that the critical moment is in the first half. He just absorbs so much pressure, and on another day he concedes that goal, we come away losing. So I'm going to give him the 3 points. I thought Connolly 2 and Philogene was 1 for me. I know that there's definitely, as Dan said, when he attacks, and particularly when he gets into the space early, he looks dominant when he's running at defenders. When he is bringing the ball into the final third and they're kind of set, he doesn't look to have that part of his game figured out just yet. But he was a menace. He would be my 1 point. And I say that the honourable mention to Delap as well, because I thought he was fantastic until he was taken off. But yeah, really hard 3-2-1 to give. It was a fantastic game, and as Dan said, just like very pleasing football all around.
Yeah, I actually was thinking of Delap, who just missed out on votes for me before you said that, as someone I haven't really mentioned, but I thought he was fantastic as well. And your comment about the fact that Leeds definitely sat a lot deeper once they got the red card definitely played against Delap, and I think that's probably why Rossini took him off, because he does so well on the turn and driving at that space. But yeah, look, another fantastic performance from him as well. But Dan, what were your votes for the game?
Yeah, look, let me just make them up right now. I forgot about everything, and then I was like, who did what and what happened? So looking at this, I'm trying to remember what happened. So this is real bad.
I can give mine first if you want, while you have a think about it.
I think no. So I'm going to go. I'm going to go 3 to Connolly for almost setting up the winner, earning the taking the foul that got what's his old mate sent off, and just general busyness. Because I think he's currently in the top 5 goals per minutes played or whatever in the football league. Yeah, which is crazy. So I'll go 3 to Connolly. I'm going to go 2 to Allsop for, again, just a couple of really, really smart saves. And it was one in the first half, and then one, there was a counter in that second half just after they copped the red. And I was like, here we go. This will be the moment where we, concede. I think we talked about it in the chat. So this will be one of those games where we'll somehow manage to lose when we got the man advantage, and then they counted straight away. But I think a big save there. And I'm going to go 1 to Greaves for, just he's having a real good season again, back in his more preferred central position, and it's a clean sheet, which as we sort of touched on that first half an hour or so, didn't maybe look like that was going to be the case. So.
Yeah, and actually, even in saying that, late in the game, Greaves was shifted out to that left wing back role when I think McLaughlin came on, and it, his overlapping out that on that left hand side was really creating a few chances for us as well. And yeah, look, we haven't talked more generally about Allsop obviously making his debut in this one. We can talk more about him in the Stoke game as well. But he was my man of the match as well. He's another one, we've sort of seen it in social media with everyone in the last few days. It's been making the point about, you look at Connolly, rubbished by Middlesbrough last season or the season before, not doing well at Brighton either. Coming in here, and as you say, he's got one of the highest goal contributions across the 4 divisions. You got Allsop, who Derby fans and Cardiff fans were rubbishing, and he's come in here and had 2 sort of man of the match performances for us. You've got Delap, who Stoke and Preston fans were rubbishing. There's so many players who've just come in here, and it's so refreshing, because for so many years, it just felt like players came in and were either worse than they'd been previously or just didn't really do much here. We've actually now got a manager in and a system in that actually develops and improves players, which is awesome to see. But yeah, Allsop was my man of the match with the 3 votes. I thought, yeah, that save on Rutter in the first half, as well as a few others. And his ability on the ball, we'll talk more about it with the Stoke game, but those long passes for everyone that, you know, wants us to lump it up forward, Allsop's sort of the man of their dreams, surely. Connolly for my 2 votes, yeah, almost created the winning goal for Traore. And I went Lakilo for the 1 vote. I thought his directness when he came on was really productive and really caused a lot of issues for Leeds. But we'll move on now and talk the Stoke game, the 3-1 win, which I went to Cheers for this one with a mate to watch it, and I sort of said to him, this is the sort of game we need to be putting away 2-0, 3-0 sort of scoreline to really, you know, your games against your top teams like a Leeds or so on, it's a sort of a different complexion. But these games against, I guess, bottom half sides or sides that should be finishing below us, we really need to be putting away quite clinically to sort of prove our credentials to be a playoff side. And at halftime, up 2-0, it was a really smooth performance. And even at full time, you know, we conceded that goal late, but even so, it was a really smooth performance from the team. And I think Logan, you were saying, or Dan, you were saying with Philogene in this game, really showed his directness and ability to get to the byline, setting up that first goal for Connolly. But Logan, I'll start with you. You know, I think it was our first win at Stoke since 2008 or 2006 or something like that. Completely wild stat, but a really impressive performance.
It's one of the happiest I think I've felt watching City in a long time. I think that the first 20 minutes seemed kind of scrappy, and it was a very open game, and you could see what we were like trying to do, but it felt like the kind of chemistry from the tail end of the Leeds game had been thrown out the window. And then as soon as that first goal kind of dropped, I felt like everything just fell into place. We really looked like you know, a well drilled unit, and it was just the manner in the way that the ball was moving around. We frustrated the hell out of Stoke, and it was almost like from the moment of that first goal, I just had this really confident feeling that we were going to win. Even as we'll do 3-2-1 shortly, but as I was going through my 3-2-1s, as I kind of ran, you know, through the team sheet, there was like key moments that I could recall from nearly everybody that I'm like, oh, that was significant. And I guess, you know, overall, it was a great performance. The player for mine that is just, you know, went well above and beyond what I was expecting is Morton. I think Tyler Morton is an incredible player. I think that from what we've seen of him in the last couple of fixtures, this was a game where he was just able to boss boss the midfield as well. I think he works really well with Seri, but I just haven't seen someone so confident, you know, box to box, that every time he touches the ball, like his decision making is incredible. He seems everywhere, and I just think that the more time he gets playing, you know, in the centre of our midfield, he is going to be maybe find of the year. I know I picked Connolly for my player of the season, but watching what he's capable of, I just got really excited. But it was a great game. As I said, I can't really fault the performance overall, other than the consolation goal we conceded, and the build-up play to Slater's goal was something that we're not used to seeing. I think it was like 26 passes or something. And just a well-worked team goal with a, you know, stellar finish.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the first 20 minutes were a bit ponderous, and I think I said in the chat that, you know, we need to be telling the players that we're already 1-0 down to actually just kick them into gear, because it seems as if it takes us conceding a goal, usually anyway, to really go out and turn it up a gear. But look, the other thing I suppose I was sort of screaming at the television was I just found Philogene just seemed to have so much space on that right-hand side. They just seemed to be hanging off him completely. And I don't know if it was Seri or, I mean, maybe Morton to an extent as well, but certainly some of the midfield, maybe Slater actually, the ball would come through the midfield and it was almost like they would have their back to Philogene and he'd have all this space and they would play it back the way they'd come rather than turning and playing him into space and keeping the move going. And I don't know if it was Rossini who said something to them or what it was, that finally they did start to find Philogene, and then of course gets to the byline for that first goal for Connolly. but then, yeah, look, everything started to click into place, and we looked absolutely brilliant. But yeah, Dan, what were your overall thoughts on this one?
First, just a quick question: do we have an option to buy on Tyler Morton?
That's a great question. I don't actually know. I don't think we do, but you know, you'd hope that maybe there's. I mean, he is a great player, and look, he has played for Liverpool a few times. So the Warriors, they probably do see him as someone that will come into their side at some point. But hey, look, we got Philogene, so maybe we get him and just get a buyback or something.
Yeah, don't know, but yeah, he's a hell of a young player. But I think overall, like, this was, I mean, again, just a real enjoyable. Apart from that first little section, once I don't know, it seems like we sort of do. We start slow, and we sort of build into it. And I think part of that is about was contributing to us. You know, the coming home with a wet sail. That, like, is not just that we've run everyone else off their legs, but I think also is like that first bit of the game, we're sort of like feeling it out, and we're just trying to figure out like how this is how we're going to work to break that, you know, this team down. There's a little bit of that going on, because you see, like, you know, Rosini on the sideline, and he's screaming at everyone and directing people around, and like Philogene in this game was one where he kept he wants the ball, so he's drifting inside, and you keep seeing Rosini on the side going, get out there, just like shifting him back out wide. There was certainly quite a number of occasions where the ball to him was on and it never arrived. There was a couple of times, I think you made a comment in the chat, and then Slater had it and went to like turn or something. Went to play it and then didn't at the last minute. And I was like, there was something, I think the player drifted out to mark Philogene or something last minute. And I was like, yeah, I can forgive him for that one. But yeah, he was finding himself in lots of space, which was real good. Yeah, Morton was immense in the midfield. I think the only other disappointing thing was Greaves getting a yellow with it, which was as a result of that was Sarah's slip, wasn't it? That then got Greaves yellow. Or was that a different tackle?
It might have been, yeah. Look, my memory gets quite hazy of the end of this game. I had many beers by that point.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I think that's probably the only other frustrating thing, that he's, you know, 5 yellow cards and we're 8 games into the season. Like, it's not a sustainable return on that part of his game. Oh no, this was the yellow card that when I first saw it, I was like, geez, this could have been a red. He came in, it was like a straight leg, studs up, but didn't collect the bloke that strongly. That's right, this one. But yeah. Like,
I was going to say, I do remember it now. The moment with Seri that you're talking about was Seri actually got himself a yellow card, cleaning up the challenge. But I remember it was significant for many reasons. But that was the wash up. So I think, yeah, the Greaves one was later in the game.
Yeah.
And actually on Seri, what did you boys make of Seri and Connolly getting into a bit of an argument on halftime? I mean, Rosenia said, "Look, that's fine. That's what you want. You want competitive players." So. We happy for I'm happy with it.
Loved it. I think that it's exactly like Rosenia articulated it beautifully when he said, like, that's the problem with that's a challenge in a championship. You need a squad, and part of having a squad is you've got players fighting for spots, and that creates that type of hunger where they just want to win. And I particularly think about the tail end of I want to say the COVID season, but it was when Eric Lehigh, etc., were there. Like, there was a real argument that just not many players, like even as fans, we didn't really feel acquainted with the players, and that might have had, you know, to do with the fact that the stadiums were empty. But it wasn't like they had a real care, or many of them would be kind of criticised for not really valuing being there. I think the fact that you've got Connolly on loan for 12 months, you know, hopefully a longer term, blowing up at, you know, arguably our best player, like certainly on paper in FIFA rankings, etc., to see that kind of hostility in a like channeled in a, you know, manageable way, I think is exactly what we need to see. And, you know, I'm sure that, you know, what happens in the dressing room and stuff, like, so they hugged it out, whatever else needed to happen. At the end of the day, like, it looked to me like it was all in, you know, well-meaning spirit, just a hostility and desire to win. And I'm all right with that. I think that's something that is a fresh change for us.
The only thing I'd add, or like it's really just echoing, but is that, I think the successful clubs have, the players themselves driving those high standards. It's one thing for the manager to say, like, this is the standard we want to play at, this is the standard we want, this is what I want for the players, but to really work and for that culture to be driving forward and improving and having that, culture of growth and success, you really need, players to be the ones who drive that. And I think that's, as Linda said, that's what you saw. You just saw, players who want to win, they want to be successful for the club, with the club, and to be fair, Seri was having a pretty shit game up until that point. He'd slipped a few times, given the ball away, and so I think, it's probably better, coming from Connolly than it ends up being in the change room, at half time and having, Rosini go, oh, yes, Seri, you're being wasteful with the ball or whatever, having someone else on, at his level go, dude, you're better than this, you got to pick it up. Because I'm sure that's exactly what he said. That's why I feel like in terms of culture, I think it's really important that you have players driving those standards.
Yeah, no doubt. And I thought, I thought it was probably one of Seri's weaker games for the season. So I think one of the impressive things as well, more generally speaking, is you look at the changes for the side and you look at the fact that Twine, Delap and Coyle were out from the starting 11 with Vinagre, Traore and Morton coming in. And we still have such a had such a dominant display against Stoke. And you think the fact that as a non-relegated club to be able to make those sorts of substitutions or changes to the starting lineup and still field such a strong side is a real positive and a real, like we sort of talked about the fact that last season we ended the season without much depth and we had, no strikers essentially. You think, even this season we started with guys like Vaughan in the starting 11 and I don't think he was even making the bench for this game. So you've got a whole lot of depth now that we didn't have previously. I mean, granted, maybe still a little bit thin up top. But yeah, Tufan still to come back in as well. And, Greaves obviously will be a shame to miss for the game, but you've got McLaughlin who can step in his place as well. So it's a real positive for us that we're sitting there in fourth place in the table with such a strong squad as it's starting to be seen.
Yeah, I think because my thing is always like at the beginning of the season, it's always like, all right, 10 games in, sort of is you get a feel for how you're traveling. And, the previous years that after 10 games, after 3 games, it's looked great. And after 10, it's looked pretty average. So, we're at 8. So a couple more games, which we're about to talk about shortly. But I think we'll be, I think above my expectations for where I thought we'd be sitting. I mean, we're traveling above. Not what I hoped or dreamed, but above what I expected.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about those games in a second. We'll do. I might start with you, Dan, first for the votes for this one.
Yeah, look, and as I think Logan sort of was saying, like there was such strong performances all around on this one. It was really challenging to decide. But the more we talked about him, the more I decided I was going to give him 3 points. So I'm going to give Tyler Morton 3 points. For a really, really strong performance. And then I was torn because I had 3 goal scorers. Lots of other players had really, really good games. But there was just a couple of moments. There was a free kick in particular that also dived low to his right and pushed it around the post, which I thought was an impressive piece of goalkeeping, as well as a couple of other really smart saves. So also just picking up some more points from me. I'm going to give him 2. And I think it would be remiss of me not to reward Traore for taking that first opportunity to forget about the Leeds game. So 1 point to Traore for netting one against Stoke. But I feel bad for missing out Slater's wonder strike, and I feel bad for not rewarding Philogene for the assist, and I feel bad for not Yeah,
it's just one of those games, isn't it? What about you, Logan?
Yeah, that's definitely different to how I would have gone. My 3 points is Philogene. I actually thought that he was the crucial piece in the game, and I know that I praised Tyler Morton as well because he was outstanding. So I'm going to go Philogene 3, Tyler Morton 2, and then my 1 point. And this is what I'm super undecided on. So maybe you can sway me with a bit of a case, but I thought that Allsop had another corker of a game. And then I think that Connolly as well, because he's back on the score sheet. He looks like a threat. And I feel like my opinion of Allsop is purely for the assist in the second goal. When we talk about going long, I think that's what Rosinya likes about him, is that not only is he capable with his feet and looks to play out, but he also does have that option to go long. And I don't know if you caught the post-match interview with Rosinya. They sort of said to him that, it looked like Mother Nature was on Allsop's side for the second goal. And he was like, no. He's like, this is why I brought him to the club. He's like, he does this all the time. Like, this is why he's here. And I thought that would have been a very encouraging thing to hear if you're Allsop. So I feel like the assist is the thing that's swaying me in the Allsop direction. But I now that I've talked about it, I feel like that was the honourable mention to Allsop. I'm going to give 1 point to Connolly because he's prolific and he just looks such a threat every single time he shows up in the box. I really like what he's doing, and also the fact that he got had a bit of beef with Seri and fired the boys up. I'll give him a point for that.
Yeah, look, and this is where it's good to have three people on for such a positive game, because we can kind of share the love around. Because I've actually gone also for the 3 points. I thought, look, I love those comments from Rosie after the game, because he's just like, nah, it's like, it was all Allsop. It's a great pass that he can ping up to Connolly on the wing for the Traore goal. His saves, like Dan was saying, like the free kick and everything, like he was probably the quote unquote most underwhelming signing of the summer, in the most unheralded, maybe a fairer word for it. Where
can I interrupt for 2 seconds because you said that, and then I just remember when we signed him, we talked about signing him, and I said like he's fine. I think I don't think he really adds anything. Like he's not necessarily better than Ingram. I think he's just like they're kind of on par. He's a good depth signing or signing to keep them like competitive. But since he's come into the first team, he's kind of looked. Like he just suits this system much better than Ingram or something.
Yeah. But I just don't understand it, because I thought even against Leeds, I'm watching him going, look, he's great with his feet. He can pick a pass. His shot stopping must be awful. Like that must be his weakness. That must be why people don't rate him. His shot stopping's been brilliant. And I'm just like, as a goalkeeper, like how was like, why did people think he was poor? Like, because was he that much worse in other systems? Like, I just don't get it. Like he's looked absolutely brilliant for us.
Maybe it's just the confidence of having someone like Rosie who just is all about upping his players and saying like, no, there's no other factors. Like he's a good player. It's not it's not whether it's not that he's an angry bastard. It's not this. It's like these are good things that I want out of my players, and it's good for them to show. And I think it's that full backing. I think encourages or allows these players to sort of play and show their potential. So I think
I said at the start of the episode, there's been so many examples in this squad now of players that were not rated at previous clubs who've come in and done such a good job here, and Allsop's just another example. So look, hopefully it continues for him, because he's looked terrific in the first 2 games. Connolly, I went for the 2 votes, goal and an assist. I was sort of worried towards the end of the game. He was looking a bit proppy, and I think he got a yellow card, but the fact that we could take him off for Delap late in the game is great, to have that sort of option and depth to do that. And he looked really, really up for it again. And Morton for the 1 vote, I thought he was terrific as well. But absolutely. Look, you've got honourable mentions to Philogene, to Traore, to Greaves, to
Vinagre had a really good game.
Vinagre as well.
Another one.
Yeah, I think that was his best performance. I think
by far.
The mate who was with me is an Everton supporter, and I was introducing him to Vinagre because, of course, Vinagre barely played for Everton last season on loan, but was absolutely terrific for us. So, look, outstanding from him as well. All round a great game. I think it was Alex Neil came out after the game and sort of just said we played them off the park, and it's rare to have an opposition manager so effusive in praise for the side. We sort of got used to in the League One season of managers all saying that they were lucky to win, they didn't deserve it. So good to actually have a manager recognise our ability, I suppose, in a game. We've got 2 tricky games coming up. We'll start with the Plymouth game. Both of these games against promoted clubs, but not your traditional sort of promoted club, because both of these sides are absolutely flying. Plymouth, managed by Stephen Schumacher, who took over in December of 2021 when Ryan Lowe went to Preston. Most recently, in their most recent outing, beat Norwich 6-2. So it sort of underlines just how dangerous they can be going forward. Interesting. I mean, they've only got 2 wins in their last 5, so it's not as if they're flying in the same way that Ipswich are. But I suppose the common theme between these two sides is sort of their all-out attack approach to games. And it will be really fascinating to see how we approach these games against them, whether we look to contain them and I suppose grind them off the park and sort of, wear them out as we have in previous games, whether we go toe-to-toe with them and try and win 4-3 or what we do to sort of deal with them. I'll start with you, Dan, I suppose, with the Plymouth game first. What's your sort of take on, look, I guess we can almost talk about these two games collectively. Like they're very similar in the sense that they're both promoted clubs, both all-out attack sort of sides. Is it a case of, 6 points really has to be the aim, or is it a case of a bit of reality that these two sides are pretty dangerous and look, if it's 4 points or 3 points, we sort of are happy to take it?
Yeah, look, I think like probably 3 or 4 points. Like I think that would be a fair return. I think I saw like Plymouth now after that, like obviously a lot of these goals came in this one game against Norwich, but they're now the second most second highest scorers in the league or something with their 13. And I think, they possibly, have the potential to, they're going to be sky high with confidence after a win like that. So, it could be a bit of a banana skin of a game, but I think a team like that does go all out in attack. I think the benefit is that leaves us lots of space to exploit, and I think we have plenty going the other way as well. So I'm not too worried about that. If they're going to go all out attack and they're going to press high or step high, well, that's just going to leave heaps of room for Philogene and Delap and Connolly and whoever else to get into and to take advantage of, and that's where Allsop's going to ping it long and set us up again. But I think they're tricky games, and I think it's mostly tricky because of like how well we've started. And you go, we've lost 1 and 8, and you go, well, kind of like we're on form. You go, well, we should probably beat these two teams. They're not, they're newly promoted, but it's kind of a weird season so far, like in a few regards. Like Middlesbrough, they're starting to sort of piece it together now, but no one really expected them to be floundering down at the bottom. And to see, I think all the promoted sides are going quite well this season. So it's
bar Sheffield Wednesday.
Well, yeah, I suppose I've put that in. But who cares? Sheffield, whatever. I think it's just a weird season. But I think if we got a win and a loss, or a win and a draw, I'd be okay with that. I think that's still going to keep us, in or around that top 6. Like if we're talking about chasing down the teams above us, then we have to get 6 points. But again, who knows? Like just Plymouth against Norwich shows that anybody can beat anybody on any given day, and we being the only team to beat Leicester shows anybody can beat anybody. So even though there's nothing to say that the 1, 2, or 3 won't also drop points in the next 2 games. So I don't know. It's just hard to say. I think I feel like we're playing really well. We should be confident as well. So I'm expecting at least a win out of the 2.
Yeah, look, there is a little bit of a gap starting to form with that top 3. I think it's 4 or 5 points behind Preston that we find ourselves in. Logan, I guess bringing that Ipswich game into it as well. Kieran McKenna's also been there since December 2021. Hugely rated sort of young English coach coming through. Ipswich sitting there in second with, I think it's 4 wins in their last 5, doing incredibly well. It's sort of hard, I suppose, not to look at these games as very winnable because of the fact that they are coming up from League One. But at the same time, you almost have to temper yourself a little bit with your expectations, given the fact that, as Dan said, look, anyone can beat anyone on the day. We can't take these games for granted.
Absolutely. Momentum is a really funny thing. And, I'm sure that as we kind of go throughout the season, you see teams, even at the top of the league. It's very rare that you just have a team walk the championship in. It's very much kind of topsy-turvy. You have periods. I mean, I remember playing Portsmouth a couple of seasons ago around Christmas and looking at it. It's been this crucial game. And I remember vividly that they were like 1 and we were 3 or something like that. And the game felt like it had a lot of sting. Actually, it might have been League One, stand corrected. But it felt like this, ginormous, colossal fixture. And we went out and beat them from memory. Or maybe they beat us. And I remember being extremely deflated, and we'd put so much emphasis on this game at the start of December. And that's very much where I see both of these fixtures. Like Ipswich is probably the fixture that scares me a little bit more than Plymouth. But I'm just looking at the way we're playing at the moment. And I find it really hard to go, like as Dan said, we've beat Leicester. Like we should have probably beaten Leeds, but certainly weren't off the pace against them. And they're probably the yardstick of the teams that I think, what we're talking about in the middle of next year, who will be on their way back to the Premier League. They are probably much more likely to be in the conversation, as we sit here in September. If we're to make those predictions, that's more the yardstick. I'm not buying into the Plymouth and Ipswich hype just yet. I'm not disrespecting them. I just think that from what we've seen of City, we have no reason to not be confident because it's so much more of a philosophy. It's a style now, like how we're playing. For us to go out and get bullied. I'm not saying that we can't be off. Of course we can. All football teams, don't have their best days. But it seems like there's a lot more security in the way we're playing, the way we look to move the ball around. And it would take a special performance to beat us. And knowing that, I actually target both these games and think that they're going to be huge momentum boosts. I think if we're able to take 6 points off teams that are, above us on the ladder, at least for now, all of a sudden that momentum, people start to buy into the hype train and, the feel good factor around the club. Like games at the MKM will be, similar to the Leeds game, sellouts, and everyone will, really start to jump on board. And if you're not already believing in the rosy philosophy, you will be. So I'm actually really excited. I think it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, as Cameron says here, I mean, look, it's really a clash of a couple of the most highly rated managers in the league between Rossinier and then both Schumacher and McKenna, all sort of really highly rated young managers. And as you say, Logan, I think it's a case where, look, to be honest, I'm just excited watching City play at the moment. I think the style we're playing and the manner we're playing matches in, it just makes every match so exciting. And it's the first time since, Dan, we've just done a couple of those flashback episodes looking back on the 2015-16 season.
Well, I was actually thinking about that flashback just when Logan was talking about like teams not, it's hard to run away. And I thought about that season when we were flying and then we fell apart in, I think it was December or something, and we just fell in a heap and then dropped down, and then we couldn't ever quite reclaim enough points to finish in the automatics.
Yeah, and it's like that's probably the last season I can remember being this sort of excited or enthusiastic about the way City was playing, and I suppose it's sort of the chance or the possibility of really being in the promotion race for the first time in a while, and actually going into each game thinking, whilst I'm not banking the 3 points, it's certainly a winnable fixture. You look at the Leicester and the Leeds games as games that we came away without losing. It's a really exciting position to be in at the moment. And certainly if we were to take 6 points from these two games, Ipswich being above us in the table as well, we can close the gap on them. It really sort of starts to cement a place either at least in the top 6 or at least in that sort of race for the top 6, which is a really good position to be in. As you say, Dan, we started the episode saying, taking stock after 10 games. After these 2 games, we'll be 10 games into the season. It'll be a great position to be in to sort of take stock of how we're looking for the season to come. But then I suppose just on these games then, and maybe I'll start with you, Dan, obviously Greaves is going to be out for that Plymouth game with that 5th yellow card. Is there any other changes that you'd look to make? I suppose McLaughlin's probably the natural one just to come in for Greaves and potentially leave the rest of the team as is.
Yes and no. I think it might be depending on, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like the Connolly-Delap partnership up top again. I thought I'm not exactly sure why, because Delap got subbed real early against Leeds. It seems like it was only 60 minutes or something, and then he didn't get much.
Didn't start against, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether there's a niggle or there's it's managing load or whether there's they've decided they want to go differently about the attacking play. But I thought those two together have been quite imposing. I think with Delap's physicality as well, particularly, makes a big difference. So I wouldn't be surprised to see those guys maybe both starting, but apart from that, yeah, it's real hard at the moment because you're sort of like this. I think we talked about the bench and like pretty much every player on the bench could feasibly be starting. You would be disappointed now, which has not always been the case. Like you go and well, Lakila's come on for a couple of really impressive substitution appearances now. Like, does he deserve a start? If he does, who's not performed that you have to take out? And it's like,
well, I was going to say,
who
you want to start Delap? Who comes out for Delap?
Don't ask me questions that I don't have answers to, mate. You just asked if I would make changes. I'm suggesting one. I don't know who I'm changing, but we're going to play with 12.
I'm thinking it through. I'm thinking it through in my head. It's like, is it Sari? Is it Morden? Is it Slater? Is it Traore? I mean, arguably on form, it's Sari, but I don't think you could take him out just because of what he adds.
It's probably Traore. If it was one of those players, probably Traore. And I don't think he's been good when he's been more central. I think he's been way more influential and way more impactful. But I just think it's weird though, because then Philogene, Delap, Connolly all gonna drive across through the lines and getting behind is a bit rough. But I just think Delap, he's so strong and so physical with getting that ball. That long balls from Allsop to Delap, where he would just bring it down and just hold off and turn and roll his defender and be able to play Philogene or Connolly in behind. I think would be really dangerous, especially on a team that's going to try and play a bit of counter, play really high and aggressively on us. If Allsop was releasing some balls long for Delap sitting high, and he was holding them up, I think that would be. Would cause them some problems, and I think then they'd have to change the way they played, or I think we'd tear them apart.
What are your thoughts on the lineup, Logan?
Yeah, look, I feel like it's shooting fish in a barrel as well. I think Dan's done a pretty good job. I guess Louis Coyle is obviously going to come back into the squad. I know that Christie didn't play too much at the start, but he looked pretty good against Stoke, in particular. You've got. I mean, there's still players like Harry Vaughan that we, were touted massive raps on at the start of the season that we haven't seen much of. Ali's another one that hasn't been, talked about. So Vinagre, obviously he had a great performance, but if Louis Coyle comes back, what does that? There's huge possibilities, and I think that's kind of, what makes it exciting. I don't even think that we can hazard a guess as to what the likely changes are. I think that Racinius did a really good job. I think that the reason that you mentioned, Alex, as to why he brought Delap off against Leeds when they went down to 10 men was because of that space, and they were just kind of sitting back. And that's why I found it strange to see him not start at Stoke. But then, arguably, he's now fresh. He's going to be coming off 7-day rest, and he would probably be our form player of the season. On performance, I know that his goal return isn't as impressive as Connolly's, but it's still great. And then Tufan as well. So look, there's just some incredible problems to have. And even as we kind of talk through it now, it kind of adds to that excitement factor and to why we are kind of starting to buy into to have this level of optimism, because playing against these teams like Plymouth and Ipswich, they will be looking at the City squad going, oh man, these guys are deep. And that's a really difficult problem and one that's hard to prepare for, because we can, offer so many different attacking approaches and set up in a way to kind of hurt you, which has been very different from our recent experiences where we are a one-trick pony of kick and hope.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And it's also the fact that we sort of touched on, sort of the strong level of performances, and you have to consider as well the fact that we've had such a tough start to the season, which I think is almost going under the radar a lot with, I mean, I think there's been a lot of praise for City so far this season as people are starting to wake up to the level of performances and our kind of credentials. But you consider the fact that, you know, we had Norwich first up, we had Leicester away, we've played Leeds, Blackburn are no slouches either. Bristol City are looking a real contender as well. And we've kind of come through that to be already sitting fourth in the table. You consider the fact that we've still got games to come against sides who aren't performing as well. It really adds a whole lot of potential to where we could actually go this season. And look, as Cameron says, you know, we've got so many good options whether we lose players in January, like Ali or Cynic. Cynic's another one that we haven't even really touched on. I think he was on the bench against Leicester. But I think that's definitely something that becomes a really difficult conversation in January in terms of what we do with the squad. And I think it's a much easier conversation from the club perspective if we continue this level of performance where you go, a club that's achieving and a club that's performing is a much better club to be around, so that if there's players like an Ali or a Cynic not getting as much game time, they might be more willing to stay knowing that the club's doing well. And there's every chance that they could be a Premier League player next season, or at least associated with a Premier League club or anything like that. Whereas if we were, you know, mid-table or something and these guys aren't getting a look in, there's much more chance that they're going to be like, oh, stuff this. I want to go somewhere in January and get an opportunity. So I think, you know, everything sort of pulls in the right direction when the club's starting to achieve on the field, which is always a good sign for the club. But maybe I'll round things off then, I guess, and get maybe not score predictions from each of you, but sort of, I guess, points predictions for these two games and any sort of closing thoughts that you might have on these fixtures. I'll start with you, Dan.
I'm going to go a win and a draw. Don't ask me about order. I haven't decided yet. But one of these games to be a win and one to be a draw. I think my only closing thoughts is I was just thinking, looking at the fixture list, and I think, you know, we got another, this is two games that are close together again, which is a good opportunity to utilize some of that depth. So, you know, we talk about changes. Maybe there won't be any changes for this first game against Plymouth, but you see Ipswich, you know, 3 days later, you know, there's probably going to be some rotation there. And I think it's going to be the case throughout the season. You know, you get to December, January, it always becomes pretty fixture heavy, with some really challenging periods where you're going to need the full the full squad. So I think those guys, it probably is very frustrating at the moment that they're not out there, not being a part of those victories and those really solid performances. But I think for the most part, their time will come. And as always, touch wood, but they're also only an injury away from, game time. And that's kind of like, that's the point of building the squad like that, so that we don't lose anything if, God forbid, somebody does, go down, has an injury, is out for a little while. So, which
we've seen with Tufan. I mean, Tufan was our top goal scorer. Whereas,
like, you looked at last year, and I thought, we did certainly improve the squad for last season, but when Ali went down, when Oscar went down, we seemed very like we were struggling big time. We seemed toothless for big chunks of the season, whereas it doesn't feel that way at all. Tufan, who when he was gone, when he left the starting 11, was top scorer, had his 4 goals in 4 games or something, and now is fighting his way to get back into the starting 11. So I think it's a testament to what Rose has built, and a testament to a successful club and confident players who are in form. So I think I'm talking myself into tipping 2 wins now.
What about you, Logan?
See, I was very confident, and I was about to go with the Dan. I was going to say 6 points, but I think Dan talked me into 4 points just because it sounds a lot more rational. I think that it will be 2 really good performances, and I actually do really feel confident about both of these games. Whether that equates to 6 points, I mean, 6 points in the championships is very hard to come by in straight succession. What I will say is, if we win these 2 games, I would back us to make the top 6. I genuinely, in two games' time, if we win these 2 games and we're 6 points ahead, I would look at the team and go, okay, I don't think, seeing what we've seen in the championship now, if we play even close to our potential, we'll be there at the business end of the season. So that's my hot tip. But I'm going to say 4 points. I'm going to follow Dan in on that. And I do see this as a really critical point in the season this early to give us a true indication of how serious we are going to be.
Massive pressure on the squad. I mean, look, it is kind of crazy when you think after these 2 games, we'll be 10 games into the season, which is getting close to a quarter of the season. Like, it's no longer a small sample size. It's a pretty decent chunk of exposed form. And you just think with those points on the board, you know, even so far as you're saying, there's a little bit of a gap starting to form with the teams outside the 6. It's, you know, for you know, games that they then have to make back up on us. And you know, people will say maybe it's a little bit reactionary or a bit over, you know, bit knee jerk to be getting too excited too early. But I think you're absolutely right, and it kind of comes back to what I was saying in terms of if you're taking 3 points off Ipswich, having taken 3 points off Leicester, having drawn with Leeds as well, all sides above or around us, you suddenly that mini table of teams that you're competing with for the top 6, the number of games remaining is reduced. So the number of times for them to take points off you is also reducing. So it all becomes a bit of a game within a game in that sense. And look, I think if we're coming out the other side of this with 6 points, I think we're in a very, very handy position. I think for me, I'm also probably going to say 4 points would be something I'd be pretty happy with. But what I'd love to just see 2 great performances. And you know, we haven't talked about it with these 2 squads, but we've got Massimo Luongo playing for Ipswich, we've got Ben Waine playing for Plymouth. So there's a couple of, you know, Aussie/A-League alumni to look out for in these games.
Just wait till we play Borough.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, like they're absolutely stacked with them as well. So I think I saw Glover got a clean sheet for them this morning, actually. So maybe he'll oust Dieng at Borough, but no, that'll be interesting.
And I just want to add one more thing, Alex. And I know that every season you can go back through and you can look at results, but I certainly don't think we got beaten at Norwich, despite the absolute domination. That late goal is one that we can almost chalk up. A point there would have been a very good indication. And then, if you want to take the Leeds result, and I know that Dan's been on the fence of, you know, a point was fair. It very could have easily been 3. And all of a sudden, you know, there's a conversation now about Leicester being the best championship team ever because of the start that they've had. And the only team that's beaten it is us.
Yeah, that's right.
And so look, let's not get into too many you know, heavy-weighted conspiracy theories. But if we add those things in, we could very easily be the best team in the championship to date this season, even though the table is not totally reflecting that. So I'm being optimistic.
Look, I think there's absolutely a case to be made. Look, it's a really exciting, as I sort of said earlier in the episode, it's a really exciting time to be a City supporter. And you look at the crowds at the MKM against Leeds, and hopefully massive crowds again against Plymouth this weekend. And it's just, and I think you were saying in the chat earlier this week, Logan, I think that's the most important thing and a great message to sign the podcast off with. But it's just great to have City back, you know, pumping in the stadium and excited for each and every game. That's where we want to be. You know, whether we make it to the Premier League or not, like this is what we're City supporters for. And you know, what a perfect day to be recording the episode on 15 years after the 2-1 win over Arsenal, which really sort of sealed being a City supporter for me with that absolutely brilliant win and the Giovanni goal. But you know, it's been a great ride already this season, and hopefully it continues with another 6 points before next week. But we'll leave it there. So thank you for joining us, Dan.
Yeah, no worries. It was a good chat, a long one, but it was it's good with the 3 of us on here. Thanks for the discussion.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us, Logan.
My pleasure, Alex. It's amazing how much more there is to talk about when things are going well.
That's it. Absolutely. And look, thanks everyone for joining us both in the chat and on the replay. But we'll be back next week to talk hopefully about another 6 points for City. But until then, come on, City.